It is incredible how old statements come back to bite you. Well, I don't think anyone understands that better in television today than Bill Maher, because we are revisiting a classic moment from 2019 where he mocked and piled on Dennis Prager for predicting what would become of the modern left. And it is amazing how correct he turned out to be in the coming years. Take a look at this rather heated exchange before I tell you what it reveals about our culture now in hindsight.
The left wing says, I'll give you gigantic lies, that the United States is a racist country. This is a lie. This is a gargantuan lie. This is the least racist, multicultural, multi-ethnic country in the history of the world. That these people believe it is proof to me about how effective lying can be. This is an unbelievably non-racist country. Have you people been to Asia? Do you people know that the Japanese did not allow one Vietnamese boat person into Japan because they're not Japanese? We allowed them into America.
What is that? We're better than better than the Japanese.
No, we're better than everyone.
Dumb argument.
We are less racist than any country with many races.
Okay,
it is a lie.
But we could still have some
that
racism
have ever been documented.
Of course, there's I'm a Jew. There are anti-Semites in America. It is a giant lie that America is anti-Semitic. I taught Jewish history at Brooklyn College. I know it. I wrote 2 books on Judaism. Yes. This is the least anti-Semitic country Jews have ever lived in.
It takes a lot of gall to say what Dennis Prager said there in the end, because even though this clip is 4 years old, he still said the same thing despite the events in the last year. But I want to take you a layer deeper here. The idea that the modern far left sells grand lies on gender, race, history, economy, and the environment are not all an accident, because if you look at the underlying philosophy that ties these things together, you realize something. It's that to say you're on the modern left today, which I differentiate from being a liberal, that means you're buying into a certain postmodern reading of the world. In other words, the scientific and rationalist thinking that came about as a result of the Enlightenment as the modernist thought has become a nuisance and a distraction at best, and in its place a subjective post-truth society has come about. It's a society that sees all relations through the lens of power and continuously seeks to pit an oppressed class against an oppressor class. That's why left-wing movements have gone so far in the last few decades, with feminism pitting men against women, socialism pitting the rich against the poor, and environmentalism now basically pitting human flourishing against the planet itself. And if you think about it, it's incredible that Dennis Prager could foresee this, even though it's still surprising how little time it took for these far-left and post-truth ideas to gain such traction in today's modern society. And one of the most important of such moments happened next.
These are giant left-wing lies.
Look, we're talking about degrees.
To say that men can menstruate is a lie, and that is what is said.
Wait, where did that?
You never heard it, right? Okay, check it out, folks. Check it out. Anyone who says a man cannot menstruate is considered transphobic.
I missed this whole story.
You did?
I did. Tell me where you're getting this.
Just Google it. Can men menstruate?
Who is saying this? You're talking about a very small percentage.
Oh, really? Then how do you allow men, biological men, to run against women in the races in Connecticut and set all the high school records?
Okay, but that's...
They're called men.
No.
The Nation magazine said they're women.
Okay, but I would agree with you on that. The way you framed it is nonsense.
I framed it perfectly accurately.
No, you didn't. What you're talking about is, yes, someone who is transgendered, was a man, now claims to be a woman, is a woman, is beating the dog out of other women in the race because, of course, they have more muscle mass. And even Martina Navratilova came out and said, this is ridiculous. You might as well not have women's sport. This is a far cry from saying men can menstruate.
I agree.
But that's not where anyone went with that but you.
Not true.
Isn't this an absolutely fascinating clip to watch now in hindsight? If someone told you it was decades old, you'd probably still believe it, because no one thinks such a large societal shift can happen in the span of just 4 years, and yet here we are. Nearly 25% of Democrat voters believe men can get pregnant, according to a poll a while back. And by the way, I think this is less about gender politics and more about something else that ties into the earlier point I made about postmodern thought. If a person on the left today tells you men can get pregnant, they're not speaking from biological reality, but instead twisting language into a subjective soup, which is characteristic of postmodern thought. That's how the biological category of sex becomes dissolved into a highly subjective and self-defined notion of gender. Dennis Prager perhaps himself didn't know that he was pointing to something much deeper here. It's not the biological reality of getting pregnant that's being affirmed, but the linguistic reality of what it means to be a man or woman that's being redefined. How else do you explain the statement like this? That is the only reason that some of the biggest health and medical sites in the US would give into this kind of redefinition. It sounds crazy at first glance, and you can tell that it did to Bill Maher at first here as well. He just didn't know how far behind the curve he was on this radical shift happening in society.
Dennis, I remember you in the old show, you were a little more reasonable.
What did I say that wasn't unreasonable?
You said that we think that men menstruate and no one does. We never even. Had you heard about it?
I'm a doctor. I missed that one, I confess.
And this is one of the premier reporters. He knows everything. These people are very. He's a doctor.
Okay.
He's one of the great.
I would make a friendly bet that the LGBTQ normative statement is men can menstruate.
And as correct as he turned out to be, Dennis wasn't looking through a crystal ball. He was simply extrapolating from the direction our modern gender wars were taking and the underlying philosophy turning identity into a self-defined soup of subjectivity. If you think about it, that theory on gender is internally coherent. If a man or a woman is self-identified, the sentence "men can get pregnant" makes sense, but something can be internally coherent and still at odds with reality. For Bill Maher, it certainly takes having a political barometer to understand that these arguments would translate into real-world views of a significant segment of the population, and seeing that shift firsthand from the start is perhaps what woke him up to where the modern left was going on a whole host of other issues and social debates. He made an appearance on Joe Rogan a while back admitting that he just doesn't recognize the left he used to stand for anymore, and it has almost led to a kind of crisis of political identity in the common sense middle in a world where both ends of the political extreme seem to have drifted so far apart.
People say to me, don't you think you've gotten more conservative? No, I haven't. The left has gotten goofier.
Yes.
So I seem more conservative, maybe, but it's not me who changed.
Yes.
I feel I'm the same guy, but 5 years ago, we hadn't spent $6 trillion to stay home. I mean, I understand we had to do something with the pandemic. I'm not sure that was, I remember when $1 trillion was too much to spend on anything. We didn't spend $1 trillion to bail out the economy in 2008. So we didn't do that. 5 years ago, no one was talking about abolishing the police. There was no talk about, pregnant men.
Whoa. Here I come.
There was looting was still illegal.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
Have I changed? No, because if someone had said 20 years ago, I'm not sure looting is a bad thing, I would have opposed it then. See, I haven't changed.
And the worst impact on that? It leaves the vacuum open for other forces to exploit. Bad ideas don't overrule good ideas. They just leave the space open for something else to fill. Unless the modern Democratic Party and the broader left-wing culture doesn't come to terms with that, we're going to see more such people like Bill Maher and other names like Anna Kasparian just be disillusioned with the political ground they stand on. But let me know in the comments if you agree, and share this clip with people in your life that are in a similar place right now. A clip like the one you saw from 4 years ago can be such a great wake-up call to people to understand just how far the political ground from underneath us has shifted.